The storm was merciless. Snow whipped across the windshield in chaotic swirls, reducing visibility to near zero. Lucas Harrington gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white against the leather. The car, a sleek black SUV that cost more than some houses, cut through the icy road like a tank, its heated interior a stark contrast to the frozen chaos outside. Lucas had been warned not to travel tonight. His assistant had practically begged him to stay in the city, where his penthouse offered comfort and safety. But Lucas wasn't a man who followed advice, and this wasn't a night for comfort. He was heading to his family's remote winter estate, an annual tradition he'd kept alive for years despite having no one to share it with anymore. The estate was 2 hours outside the city, and in normal conditions, the drive was scenic, almost therapeutic. But tonight was anything but normal. The radio crackled warnings about the storm, dangerous blizzard conditions, travel highly discouraged, stay indoors if possible. Lucas turned it off. Just another mile, he muttered, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. That was when he saw it, a figure stumbling onto the road ahead. Lucas hit the brakes hard, the SUV skidding slightly before coming to a stop. His heart pounded as he squinted through the snow. A woman was in the middle of the road, waving her arms frantically. Her coat flapped wildly, and her movements were frantic, almost desperate. He rolled down the window just enough to hear her voice over the wind. "Please, help us," she cried. For a moment, Lucas hesitated. It wasn't that he didn't want to help. It was that this situation felt wrong. His instincts, honed from years of ruthless business dealings, screamed at him to be cautious. But as he looked closer, he saw something that changed everything. Behind the woman, barely visible through the storm, was a small child clinging to her leg. "Get in," Lucas shouted, throwing the car into park. The woman grabbed the child and stumbled toward the passenger side. Lucas leaned over to open the door, and the freezing air flooded the cabin as they climbed in. Thank you," the woman gasped, her teeth chattering. The child, a boy no older than 6, was eerily silent. His face was pale, his lips tinged with blue. Lucas's heart sank as he realized just how dire their situation was. "What the hell are you doing out here?" Lucas demanded, cranking the heat. "Our car, it broke down," the woman stammered, holding the boy close. "I tried to call for help, but there's no signal." Lucas frowned. They were miles from the nearest town, and in this storm, walking for help was a death sentence. "Do you have anywhere to go?" he asked. She shook her head. "We were heading to my sister's house, but we didn't make it. Please, can you just take us anywhere safe?" Lucas nodded, shifting the car into gear. "We'll figure it out." As they drove, the woman tried to keep the boy warm, rubbing his arms and holding him close. Lucas glanced at them from the corner of his eye, his mind racing. "Is he okay?" Lucas asked. I think he's getting frostbite," the woman admitted, her voice breaking. "I tried to keep him warm, but..." Lucas's jaw tightened. He'd seen frostbite before, during an ill-advised business retreat in the Arctic. It wasn't something to take lightly. "Here," he said, pulling a thick blanket from the back seat. "Wrap him in this." The woman nodded, wrapping the boy tightly. "What's your name?" Lucas asked. "Emily," she said. "And this is Jamie." "I'm Lucas," he said. "Thank you, Lucas," Emily whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. The road grew worse as they pressed on, the storm intensifying. Lucas's GPS was useless, and even his state-of-the-art SUV was struggling against the elements. Just as he thought they were making progress, the car jolted violently, and a sickening crunch filled the air. "Damn it!" Lucas swore, pulling to the side of the road. "What happened?" Emily asked, panic in her voice. "I think we hit something," Lucas said, stepping out into the storm. The wind slammed into him like a wall, and he struggled to see through the snow. He circled the car and saw the damage. The front tire had hit a jagged rock hidden under the snow, and it was completely shredded. Lucas climbed back into the car, slamming the door shut. "We're not going anywhere," he said grimly. Emily's face fell. "What do we do now?" Lucas thought quickly. The estate wasn't far. Maybe a mile or two. But in this storm, it might as well have been 100. Still, it was their only option. "We walk," Lucas said. Emily's eyes widened. "Are you serious? In this storm? Do you have a better idea?" Lucas countered. She didn't. They bundled up as best they could. Lucas carrying Jamie while Emily clung to his arm to stay upright. The wind howled like a living thing, tearing at their clothes and stealing their breath. "Just keep moving," Lucas shouted over the storm. Time lost all meaning as they trudged through the snow. Every step felt like a battle, but Lucas refused to stop. He could feel Jamie shivering against his chest, and the thought of failing them was unbearable. Finally, through the blinding white, Lucas saw it, the dark outline of his estate. Relief flooded through him, giving him the strength to push forward. "We're almost there," he called to Emily. When they reached the estate, Lucas fumbled with the keypad to unlock the door. His fingers were numb, and it took several tries, but the door finally clicked open. "Get inside," he said, ushering Emily and Jamie into the warmth. The house was massive, with vaulted ceilings and roaring fireplaces. But at that moment, it felt like a haven. Lucas set Jamie down on a plush sofa and grabbed a stack of blankets, wrapping the boy tightly. "Stay here," he told Emily. "I'll get supplies." Lucas disappeared into the house, returning minutes later with a first aid kit, hot drinks, and a pile of firewood. He lit the fireplace, the flames casting a warm glow over the room. As Jamie slowly warmed up, color returned to his cheeks. Emily watched him with tears in her eyes, then turned to Lucas. "You saved us," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to thank you." Lucas shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. The storm's not over." But even as the wind howled outside, Lucas felt something shift within him. A sense that this night, and these strangers, would change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The crackling fire filled the room with warmth, but tension hung heavy in the air. Lucas sat in an armchair, his eyes flicking between Emily and Jamie, who huddled together on the sofa. The blizzard outside raged louder than ever, its relentless howling a reminder that escape wasn't an option tonight. "Drink this," Lucas said, handing Emily a steaming mug of cocoa he had made earlier. "Thank you," she said softly, her fingers trembling as she wrapped them around the cup. Jamie had already fallen asleep, his small body curled under layers of blankets. The boy's breathing was steady now, but his pale complexion and chapped lips told Lucas just how close they had come to disaster. "You should rest too," Lucas said, his tone more gentle than he expected. "I'll keep the fire going." Emily nodded but didn't move. Her eyes remained fixed on Jamie, her face a mask of worry. "You're safe here," Lucas added. "Both of you." She glanced at him, hesitating. "Why did you stop for us?" The question caught him off guard. Lucas leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Wouldn't anyone?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "Most people wouldn't. Not in a storm like this." Lucas shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "I guess I'm not most people." Emily studied him for a moment, as if trying to decipher his motivations. Finally, she whispered, "You saved us. I'll never forget that." Hours passed, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. The house creaked under the weight of the wind, but the glow of the fireplace kept the room cozy. Lucas stared out the window, his thoughts drifting. He hadn't planned on spending Christmas Eve this way. Usually, he spent it alone at his estate, surrounded by silence and luxury. It was easier that way, no expectations, no messy emotions. Yet tonight, with a mother and her child sleeping under his roof, he felt something he hadn't in years, a sense of purpose. But something about Emily didn't sit right. Her desperation earlier on the road had been real, but now, in the quiet safety of the house, there was an edge to her demeanor. She was guarded, her gaze flitting around the room as if searching for an exit or a threat. Who are you running from? Lucas asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Emily's head snapped up, her eyes wide. What are you talking about? You said your car broke down, but you're miles from anywhere. You weren't just passing through, were you? Emily's lips parted as if to respond, but no words came out. She glanced at Jamie, her body instinctively shielding him even in his sleep. You can trust me, Lucas said, his voice steady. I just need to know if someone's after you. If there's a danger I need to be prepared for. Emily hesitated, then let out a shaky breath. I wasn't lying about the car breaking down. But you're right. We weren't just passing through. She paused, her hands gripping the mug tightly. We're running from my ex-husband. Lucas felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. Jamie's father? He asked. Emily nodded. He's not a good man. I thought I could handle it, but things got worse after the divorce. He started showing up at Jamie's school, threatening me, trying to take him. I had to get out. Lucas's jaw tightened. Does he know where you're going? No, she said quickly. I didn't tell anyone. We were heading to my sister's house in the next town over, but... She trailed off, her voice breaking. The storm hit, and then the car died. Lucas's mind raced. He wasn't a stranger to conflict. His business empire had been built through countless battles in boardrooms and courtrooms. But this was different. This was personal. Do you think he's looking for you? Lucas asked. Emily hesitated. I don't know. Maybe. Lucas stood, his posture rigid. If he's as dangerous as you say, we need to be ready. The next morning, the storm finally began to ease, but the world outside was unrecognizable. Snowdrifts covered the driveway, and the trees were heavy with ice. Lucas surveyed the scene from the front door, his breath fogging in the icy air. Emily joined him, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Can we leave today? She asked. Not yet, Lucas said. The roads will be blocked for at least another day. We'll need to wait for the plows. Emily's face fell, but she nodded. Thank you for letting us stay. I don't know what we would have done without you. Lucas turned to her, his expression unreadable. You don't owe me anything. Just let me know if there's more to this story than you've told me. Before she could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Both of them froze. Lucas exchanged a look with Emily, then stepped toward the door. Peering through the side window, he saw a man bundled in a heavy coat, his face partially obscured by a scarf. Who is it? Emily whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know, Lucas replied. Stay back. He opened the door just enough to speak. Can I help you? The man's eyes narrowed. I'm looking for someone, a woman and her son. Have you seen them? Lucas's blood ran cold. Who's asking? I'm her husband, the man said, his tone icy. Or at least I was. Lucas tightened his grip on the door, his mind racing. He could feel Emily's presence behind him, her panic almost tangible. I haven't seen anyone, Lucas said evenly. Now, if you'll excuse me, the man pushed forward, but Lucas blocked the door with his body. I'm not letting you in, Lucas said, his voice firm. Leave. The man glared at him, but after a tense moment, he stepped back. This isn't over, he said, turning and walking away. Lucas shut the door, locking it securely. Emily's face was pale, her hands shaking. That was him, she whispered. I figured, Lucas said. But don't worry, he's not getting anywhere near you or Jamie. Emily looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. Why are you doing this? You don't even know us. Lucas hesitated, then said, because someone has to. Lucas barely slept that night. Every creak of the estate, every distant howl of the wind, set his nerves on edge. He dealt with ruthless competitors in the business world, but this was different. Emily's ex-husband wasn't after a company or a contract. He was after his family. Lucas sat in the living room, his sharp eyes fixed on the security monitors he'd activated. Cameras dotted the property, their black and white feeds revealing nothing but swirling snow and the eerie calm of the frozen landscape. Emily sat on the sofa nearby, her arms wrapped around Jamie. The boy was still asleep, his face peaceful despite the tension suffocating the room. "What happens if he comes back?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He won't get in," Lucas said firmly. "Not without a fight." Emily's expression wavered between gratitude and fear. "I'm sorry we brought this to you. I never wanted anyone else to get involved." Lucas glanced at her, his expression softening. "You didn't have a choice. And now that I am involved, I'm not going to back down." Emily met his gaze, her lips trembling. "Why are you doing this? You could have left us out there in the storm." "Most people would have." Lucas hesitated, searching for the right words. "Maybe I see something in you and Jamie, something I lost a long time ago, and maybe saving you is my way of finding it again." Emily looked away, her eyes glistening, but she said nothing. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world blanketed in snow. The estate was eerily quiet, but the encounter with Emily's ex-husband lingered like a dark cloud over them. Lucas made a pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. Emily joined him, looking pale and tired. "I've been thinking," she said cautiously. "Maybe we should leave. If we stay, we're putting you in danger." Lucas shook his head. "The roads are still blocked, and you'd be exposed the moment you stepped outside. Besides, this estate is more secure than any place you'll find out there." "But—" "No buts," Lucas interrupted. "You and Jamie are staying. End of discussion." Before Emily could argue further, the security monitor beeped. Lucas's stomach tightened as he glanced at the screen. A black SUV had pulled up at the edge of the property. "That's not him, is it?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "Stay here," Lucas said, grabbing his phone as he headed toward the front door. As Lucas approached the estate's gates, he saw two men exit the SUV. One of them was Emily's ex-husband, his jaw set and his eyes burning with determination. The other man was broader, his stance exuding menace. Lucas pressed the intercom button. "You're trespassing. Turn around before this gets worse for you." The ex-husband stepped forward, smirking. "Worse for me? I don't think you understand, pal. I'm here to collect what's mine." Lucas clenched his jaw. "Emily and Jamie aren't your property. They're staying here, and you're leaving." The second man chuckled, a low, threatening sound. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But this can go one of two ways. You let us in, or we make our way in." Lucas's pulse quickened. He wasn't a fighter, but he wasn't about to let these men intimidate him. "I don't think you understand," Lucas said coolly. "This property is fully secured. Cameras, alarms, and a direct line to the authorities. You take one step onto my land, and you'll be dealing with more than just me." The ex-husband's smirk faltered, but the larger man stepped closer to the gate, gripping the metal bars. "You think we're scared of some rich guy playing hero? Open the gate, or I'll rip it down myself." Lucas's heart pounded, but he didn't let his fear show. "This is your last warning. Leave now, or you'll regret it." The men exchanged a glance, then retreated to their SUV. Lucas watched as they drove away, but his gut told him this wasn't over. When Lucas returned to the house, Emily was waiting anxiously. "What happened?" she asked. "They're gone for now," Lucas said. Emily's face fell. "For now? They'll be back," Lucas admitted. "But we'll be ready." Emily's voice broke. "This is my fault. If I just stayed away." "Stop," Lucas said firmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "This isn't your fault, and you're not alone in this. We'll handle it together." Emily looked at him, her expression a mixture of gratitude and despair. "How can you be so calm?" Lucas offered a small, reassuring smile. "I've faced worse storms than this." That afternoon, Lucas doubled down on security. He activated the estate's reinforced gates and set additional motion sensors around the perimeter. He also placed a call to a trusted friend, a retired security specialist named Cole Jensen. Cole arrived within hours, a no-nonsense man with a military background and a sharp eye for danger. "You weren't kidding about the storm," Cole said, surveying the snow-covered property. "This storm isn't the problem," Lucas replied, filling him in on the situation. Cole nodded. "I'll keep an eye on things. Anyone tries to get through, they'll regret it." Night fell, and the tension inside the estate was palpable. Lucas sat in the living room, a fire crackling in the hearth, while Cole monitored the security feeds. Emily paced nervously, occasionally glancing at Jamie, who was asleep on the sofa. "Lucas," Emily said softly, "what if this doesn't end? What if he never stops coming for us?" Lucas looked at her, his expression resolute. "Then we'll keep fighting. You've already been through so much, Emily. Don't give up now." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. "Thank you for everything." Lucas leaned closer, his voice low. "You don't have to thank me. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me you'll fight too. For Jamie. For yourself." Emily swallowed hard, then whispered, "I promise." The following day, the snow-covered landscape glistened under a pale sun, but the tension inside Lucas's estate was thicker than ever. The brief reprieve was a fragile illusion. Lucas, Emily, and Cole all knew it wouldn't last. Lucas stood by the security monitors in the control room, his eyes glued to the screens. Cole leaned against the wall, his calm demeanor masking the readiness of a man trained for high-pressure situations. "They'll be back," Cole said, breaking the silence. "I know," Lucas replied. "What's the play when they do?" Lucas turned to him, his expression hard. "We hold them off. I'm not letting anyone near Emily or Jamie." Cole nodded, but his eyes carried a flicker of concern. "You realize this might not end cleanly, right? Guys like him don't give up without a fight." Lucas's jaw tightened. "I don't care how messy it gets. I'm ready." Meanwhile, Emily sat in the living room with Jamie, trying to keep him occupied. The boy was building a fort out of sofa cushions, his laughter a rare sound amidst the tension. Emily smiled faintly as she watched him, but her mind raced with fear. Her ex-husband had found them once. There was no doubt he'd come again. And this time, she wasn't sure Lucas's defenses would be enough. "Mom!" Jamie's small voice broke through her thoughts. "Yes, sweetheart. Are we gonna be okay?" Emily swallowed the lump in her throat and forced a smile. "Of course we are. Lucas is keeping us safe." Jamie nodded, seemingly reassured, and returned to his fort. But Emily wasn't sure if she believed her own words. As night fell, the storm returned, blanketing the estate in darkness and snow. Lucas and Cole stationed themselves in the control room, their eyes scanning the monitors. "They're here," Cole said suddenly, pointing to a feed. Two SUVs crept up the snow-packed driveway, their headlights cutting through the gloom. 4 men stepped out, including Emily's ex-husband. "Looks like he brought friends," Cole muttered, his tone grim. Lucas clenched his fists. "Activate the alarms. Let's see how they handle it." The estate's floodlights flared to life, bathing the driveway in blinding white. A piercing alarm shattered the stillness, and the men froze, momentarily disoriented. "Go home," Lucas's voice boomed through the intercom. "You're not getting in." Emily's ex-husband stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "I'm not leaving without my son." Lucas turned to Cole. "Keep an eye on the cameras. I'm going out there." Cole grabbed his arm. "Are you sure about this?" Lucas nodded. "They need to see that I'm not bluffing." Emily watched from the window as Lucas stepped outside, his tall figure cutting through the snowstorm like a shadow. She pressed her hand against the glass, her heart pounding. "Lucas," she whispered, fear clawing at her chest. Lucas stopped several feet from the men, his breath visible in the freezing air. "This is private property," he said coldly. "Turn around and leave before this gets worse for you." The larger man from before smirked, stepping closer. "What are you gonna do, rich boy? Call the cops? They won't get here in time." Lucas didn't flinch. "I don't need the cops to deal with you. Emily's ex-husband sneered. You think you can keep me from my son? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Lucas replied, his voice icy. A coward who uses fear to control people. But it's not going to work here. The ex-husband's face darkened, and he lunged forward. But before he could get close, the estate's gates surged with electricity, sparking dangerously. He stumbled back, cursing. Last chance, Lucas said, his voice unwavering. Leave. Now. Inside the estate, Cole monitored the situation, his hand hovering near the alarm controls. But it wasn't the men outside who caught his attention. It was a flicker of movement on another screen. Lucas, Cole said through the earpiece. We've got a problem. What is it? Lucas asked, his tone sharp. They're trying to breach the back entrance, Cole replied. 2 of them split off while you were talking. Lucas swore under his breath. I'm on it. Emily's heart raced as she watched Lucas stride back inside, his expression grim. They're trying to get in through the back, he told her. Stay here with Jamie. Cole and I will handle it. Be careful, Emily said, her voice trembling. Lucas nodded, his eyes meeting hers for a brief moment before he turned and disappeared down the hall. In the back of the estate, 2 men worked to force open a side door. One of them grinned as he wedged a crowbar between the door and its frame. This rich guy thinks he's untouchable, the man muttered. Suddenly, a voice rang out behind them. Step away from the door. The men turned to see Lucas and Cole standing a few feet away. Cole held a small but imposing baton, while Lucas's expression was steely. Leave now and this ends here, Lucas said. The men exchanged a glance, then charged. The fight was brief but brutal. Cole moved with practiced efficiency, taking down one of the intruders with a swift blow to the knee. Lucas wasn't as experienced, but his sheer determination carried him through. He blocked a swing from the crowbar, shoving the second man into the snow. The intruders scrambled to their feet and retreated, limping back toward the SUVs. By the time Lucas and Cole returned to the living room, Emily was pacing nervously. Are you okay? She asked, rushing to Lucas. We're fine, he assured her, though his breathing was heavy. They're gone for now. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to thank you. You're risking so much for us. Lucas placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady. You don't have to thank me. I told you. I'm not letting anyone hurt you or Jamie. The night was eerily quiet after the confrontation. The estate's security systems hummed with renewed energy, and Cole patrolled the property with the vigilance of a soldier. Inside, Lucas sat at the dining table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. Across from him, Emily was trying to keep calm, though her hands trembled slightly as she sipped her tea. Jamie was upstairs, sound asleep in one of the estate's guest rooms. For the first time all night, he seemed at peace, but Lucas and Emily knew the same couldn't be said for them. They're going to come back, aren't they? Emily asked softly, breaking the silence. Lucas nodded. Men like him don't give up easily. He'll push until he gets what he wants, or until we stop him. Emily lowered her gaze, her expression heavy with guilt. I should have left before this got out of hand. I should have gone further, hidden better. Stop, Lucas interrupted firmly. This isn't your fault. He's the one causing this, not you. Her eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't argue. Instead, she whispered, Why are you doing this, Lucas? Why risk so much for us? Lucas hesitated, the words catching in his throat. Finally, he said, Because I know what it's like to lose someone you love. Emily's eyes widened slightly, and she waited for him to continue. My wife, Lucas said, his voice low. She died 5 years ago. It was an accident, something I couldn't control. But I still carry the guilt every day. When I saw you and Jamie on that road, I couldn't just drive by. I couldn't let something happen to you, not when I could do something about it. Emily stared at him, her expression softening. I'm so sorry, Lucas. He gave her a small, bittersweet smile. Don't be. Maybe this is my chance to do something that matters again. The quiet moment was interrupted by Cole's voice crackling over the intercom. "They're back," he said, his tone tense. Lucas shot to his feet, his heart racing. He glanced at Emily, who was already moving toward the stairs. "Stay with Jamie," he told her. "Lock the door and don't come out until I tell you it's safe." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Be careful." "I will," Lucas promised, before grabbing his coat and heading for the control room. The security feeds showed Emily's ex-husband and his men approaching the property once more, this time with tools and weapons. They were determined to break through. "They've got bolt cutters," Cole noted grimly. "They're going to try to breach the fence." Lucas's mind raced. "Can we hold them off?" "For a while," Cole replied. "But if they get inside, it's going to get messy." Lucas clenched his jaw. "Then we make sure they don't get inside." The men worked quickly, cutting through the chain-link fence at the edge of the property. The alarm blared, but they pressed on, emboldened by their determination. From the safety of the control room, Lucas activated the estate's next line of defense: floodlights and motion-activated sprinklers that sprayed freezing water into the air. The intruders cursed as the icy spray soaked them, but they didn't stop. "We're not scaring them off this time," Cole muttered. Lucas nodded grimly. "Then we fight." Lucas and Cole armed themselves with batons and stun guns, tools Lucas had never imagined he'd use for anything more than deterring the occasional intruder. Together, they moved toward the perimeter, determined to face the men head-on. The first man to cross the property line was met with Cole's swift, calculated strike, sending him sprawling into the snow. Lucas, though less experienced, held his ground, using the stun gun to disable another intruder. But the numbers weren't in their favor. Emily's ex-husband stormed through the chaos, shouting orders to his men. His eyes burned with rage as he spotted Lucas. "You think you're a hero?" he snarled, advancing toward him. "I think you're a coward." Lucas shot back, his voice steady despite the tension. The ex-husband lunged, and Lucas barely dodged the swing of his crowbar. The fight was brutal and clumsy, but Lucas refused to back down. Cole, meanwhile, held off the other men, his military training giving him the upper hand. The turning point came when Emily appeared on the balcony above, holding a flashlight. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Her ex-husband froze, looking up at her with a twisted smile. "There you are, Emily. Why don't you come down here and make this easy for everyone?" Emily's hand trembled as she held the light steady. "No, this ends now. You're not taking Jamie, and you're not controlling us anymore." Lucas took advantage of the distraction, delivering a final blow that sent the ex-husband crashing to the ground. The police arrived minutes later, their flashing lights illuminating the aftermath. Emily's ex-husband and his men were arrested, their protests drowned out by the sound of handcuffs clicking into place. As the chaos subsided, Lucas turned to Emily, who stood at the front door, her face pale but resolute. "It's over," he said softly. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Lucas, for everything." Epilogue: the next morning, the estate was quiet once more. The sun rose over the snow-covered grounds, casting a warm glow over the house. Emily sat at the dining table with Jamie, who was laughing over a plate of pancakes Lucas had made. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace. Lucas watched them from the kitchen, a small smile playing on his lips. "Are you sure you don't want to come with us?" Emily asked, looking up at him. Lucas hesitated. "You and Jamie deserve a fresh start, Emily. Somewhere safe where he can grow up without fear. But if you ever need anything at all, you call me." Emily stood, crossing the room to stand in front of him. "You've already done more for us than I could ever repay. You saved our lives, Lucas." Lucas shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Just promise me you'll be happy." Emily smiled, her eyes glistening. "I promise." As she and Jamie prepared to leave, Lucas watched them go, his heart heavy but full of a newfound purpose. For the first time in years, he felt like he'd made a difference. Not as a millionaire, but as a man willing to fight for what truly mattered.